So in these studies, they injected these coronavirus vaccines, and the antibodies got these really high antibody responses. They go, yeah, now let's see if it keeps them from getting sick. Hence the word effective. And another thing I want you to remember is that the word effective is not a synonym for protection. When we as general consumers hear safe and effective, well, safe is kind of like we think it's not going to kill anybody, and effective means it keeps you from getting sick. But in scientific research that has to do with vaccines, effective means I injected foreign matter into an animal, and the animal got an antibody response. It did what it's intended to do. But the antibody isn't there to protect you, because you can have high antibody levels, still contract the infection in all of them, including tetanus. So from now on, when you hear the word effective, I want you to think that's a scientific term that means that junk created an antibody. Effective doesn't mean keeps me from getting sick. They're not synonyms. So when they did these studies in these animals with the coronavirus, they got this high antibody response. So they said, well, let's see if it keeps them from getting sick. And then they exposed these animals to garden variety coronavirus, and they all died by something called antibody-dependent enhancement, which we'll talk about a little bit. Judy alluded to it. We're going to talk about the details of that in a few more minutes. And there's a paper that came out in 2012 and another one in 2019. At the end of the paper, they said, we have tried this in multiple different mammals. We've tried it in mice, in rats, in guinea pigs, in hamsters, in ferrets, and in monkeys. And the way it's written, it's like a double negative. It says, we have not found a mammal for which this has not occurred. Interpret it meaning it happens in every mammal. That when you get this high antibody response and you get re-exposed to garden variety coronavirus, people are going to die. And that actually is a paper that came out 2 weeks ago from an organization in the UK called SAGE, S-A-G-E. SAGE is a modeling agency. They're the ones that make all the charts and graphs and say, well, if we flatten the curve this long, then we can open up and all this stuff. It's a bunch of nonsense, but that's what they do. And so if you think about SAGE being sort of like a subdivision of the UK's equivalent of the CDC, SAGE came out with a paper. It's a 27-page paper. And on paragraph 32 and paragraph 56, it says in plain language, we are expecting a third wave this fall. And when that third wave comes, 60 to 70% of people who've had 2 shots will be either hospitalized or die. In plain language. And are we going to have a third wave? Of course we are. Why? Because when we go into fall season, we get influenza and coronaviruses that cause influenza and influenza-like illness all winter long. We also get all of these people who are getting these shots are creating these all these mutants, and they're using the mutants to scare people to death. Except